Hello everyone, and welcome to Employability is Not Enough, integrating mental health and psychological safety into the youth workforce development. My name is Shiza Hirani, and I am the founder of Youth Mentor Net Cafe. It's a global nonprofit organization focused on building academic confidence among youths, providing them with mentorship, guidance, resource dissemination, and knowledge mobilization to support a stronger youth employment outcomes in Canada's workforce. So today, I want us to move beyond simply talking about jobs and employment numbers. I want us to think more deeply about the human side of the work, especially what young people are emotionally, mentally, and psychologically experiencing while trying to survive and succeed in today's workforce. Because the question is not simply only are youth employed, but it's more deeper than that. It's are youth actually okay? So here's the agenda for today. We will unpack why employability alone is not enough. We will explore the hidden mental health crisis within youth employment. We'll discuss about the burnout culture, the toxic workplace systems, examine some of the barriers faced by marginalized youths. We'll also talk about the pressure of constant upskilling, unpaid labor, internship, understand why psychological safety matters so much, and then finally explore some of the community-centered solutions and recommendations for building healthier and more sustainable systems. So by the end of this presentation, I hope you walk away not only thinking differently about youth employment, but also reflecting on what truly defines success in workforce development. So, what's the conceptual problem here? We often measure productivity, but are young people really okay? And when I began researching this topic more deeply, I came to realize that youth employment is often shaped by many interconnected and multi-layered factors. So, traditionally, youth employment systems are evaluated through things like employment rates, GDP contribution, job placement numbers, productivity outcomes, and economic growth. And while those indicators absolutely matter, they only tell one part of the story because what is often ignored are the emotional and psychological realities behind those numbers. So that includes burnout, anxiety, depression, emotional exhaustion, isolation, workplace trauma, and the loss of identity and belonging, just to name a few here. So, a young person can technically be employed, they can be productive, contributing to economic, but while silently, they might be struggling mentally, emotionally every single day. And I think that is one of the biggest gaps in how we currently define the workforce success. We have built systems that prepare youth for work, but not always systems that protect their well being within the work itself. Which leads us to why youth are burning out. Now, many young people are carrying invisible weight. As a founder of a nonprofit myself called Youth Mentor Net Cafe, I have had the chance to sit down with youths from diverse communities through roundtables, town halls, workshops, and one-to-one conversations to better understand the challenges they are navigating. And especially for youth from marginalized communities, many shared that they constantly feel like they are carrying an invisible weight on their shoulders. So, some of the most common challenges that repeatedly came up included education pressures, juggling multiple jobs at the same time, financial instability, caregiving responsibilities, housing insecurity, racism, discrimination, immigration stress, lack of accessible mental health support, and as well as cultural expectations. So many young people are trying to survive several systems all at once. And that is why burnout is becoming so common. Because burnout is not simply an individual weakness or lack of resilience, it is often a systemic response to the chronic pressure many young people face. And for many youth today, there is no real balance between work, school, family, responsibilities, And when people are constantly in that survival mode, eventually their mind and body begin to shut down emotionally. This leads us to examining toxic work culture and why that hurts youth. So, we'll talk about hustle culture and why that is being normalized so much in this era. Young people today are constantly told things like work harder, you need to be grateful for opportunities, you need to gain experience first, do more with less, always be productive, have a nap later, right? So, and over time, this creates emotional exhaustion, this creates anxiety, disconnection, low self worth, fear of failure, and chronic stress. So, as you would have seen, even entry level jobs now often expect years of prior experiences. And honestly, many of you have probably seen those funny TikTok or Instagram videos where a newborn baby rushes out of the hospital holding a resume or sitting at a computer applying for jobs immediately after birth. And people often laugh at those videos because they are satire, but they also reflect something painfully real about our current labor market. And that's that youth today often feel like they are expected to already have experience, certifications, leadership, networking skills, digital branding, and productivity mastery before even beginning to given a fair opportunity or chance at a leadership position. And that expectation is often unrealistic, emotionally draining, and unsustainable, even. So, how does that impact the workplace? Toxic workplace environments do not just hurt individuals emotionally, but they also negatively affect organizations themselves. So, they increase absenteeism, presenteeism, which means showing up mentally exhausted. It leads to higher turnover, workplace disengagement, reduces creativity and innovation, and this is important because burned out youth are not unmotivated, but rather they are often unsupported. So, one of the strongest statements I came across while researching this topic was productivity without psychological safety is not sustainable. And I truly firmly believe in that. Because if young people constantly feel anxious, if they feel undervalued, unsafe, or emotionally exhausted, eventually they disconnect, not because they lack ambition, but because the environment itself becomes harmful for them. And that's why psychological safety is not a luxury in the workforce. It is essential for long term engagement, innovation, and sustainable workforce participation. So now let's steer our focus on bias and discrimination. So not every young person enters the workforce equally. Through surveys, qualitative interviews, and community discussions, I came to better understand how many marginalized youth experience racial discrimination, exclusion, bias, gender bias, tokenism, stereotyping, lack of representation, microaggression, and this particularly tends to affect BIPOC youth communities, those who are gender diverse, or youths living with disabilities. And now, as AI becomes more integrated into those hiring systems, another concern is emerging. These AI hiring tools often operate as black box properties, meaning people do not fully understand how those decisions are being made. So, if historical hiring data already contains bias, AI systems can continue reproducing those same discriminatory patterns, often disadvantaging racialized youths, those who are women in STEM, or individuals entering male dominated professions. And many applicants are never even told when AI is being used to screen them or to evaluate them. So while technology can improve efficiency in one area, we also have to ask ourselves, is that efficiency serving those who are from underserved communities, and at what cost, really? Looking at the lived experiences and voices of some of the youth participants in the nonprofit program that I run, so through nonprofit workshops, employment boot camps, and community conversations, I heard many deep personal stories coming from youth, especially those who are from underserved communities. And honestly, some of these experiences were heartbreaking. One of the youth shared that, quote, "My manager constantly cut me off and mocked my accent. I felt invisible," unquote. Another youth said, "Because I'm indigenous, stereotypes were automatically thrown at me before people even got to know me," unquote. And another youth shared, quote, "I felt like I had to work twice as hard just to be respected," unquote. And when I hear statements like these, it reminds me that workplace harm is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it shows up quietly through exclusion, disrespect, stereotyping, or even constantly feeling like you do not belong. And I want everyone here to just pause for maybe a second and reflect on how hearing these stories made you feel. Now you can silently think about it, or if you wish to do so, maybe even drop a word in the chat of how that made you feel. So just take a moment to silently think about how those experiences of these youths made you feel. If you feel comfortable, maybe you can drop a word in the chat to express how that made you feel. So essentially, because many youth are not leaving jobs because they are incapable, but they are leaving these environments where they do not feel safe, they do not feel respected or valued at all. And that leads us to the pressure of constant upskilling. So the youth of this era, today's youth, are told to constantly take more certifications to upskill themselves to build their own brands, right? And while some of these things can absolutely create professional growth and value for organizations, we also need to recognize the fact that many youth simply cannot afford this constant pressure to upskill. Youth from underserved communities may face expensive training programs, transportation barriers, limited technology, financial instability, death, family responsibilities. At the same time, some employers unfortunately also exploit youth labor through unpaid internships, underpaid contracts, exposure to opportunities that might be unstable or temporary work, and even excessive expectations without the actual support. So, in my strong, firm belief, opportunity should not come at the cost of well being. If the path toward employability is financially and emotionally inaccessible, then many youth will inevitably be excluded from success. Now, this drives us back to the core of the session. Employability is not enough. The youth workforce development must evolve, and that could be done in multiple ways. So, not only focusing on skills, resumes, productivity, and job placement, but also considering factors like mental health, psychological safety, right? Belonging, emotional well being, work life balance, and having a sustainable career development pathway forward because employment alone does not automatically equal to well-being. A young person might have a job but still feel isolated. They might feel anxious, emotionally exhausted, or unsafe. So the real question becomes, are we preparing youth simply to enter the workforce, or are we actually preparing workplaces to support youth themselves? And we should also stir our focuses on invisible labor. So, for many youth, work includes often invisible labor, and that could include unseen and unrecognized work, which could lead to emotional masking, code switching, navigating discrimination. So, for example, some youth feel they must hide parts of their identity to fit workplace expectations, and others constantly feel pressure to overperform simply to gain the same amount of equal respect as their peers. And over time, carrying this invisible emotional labor becomes extremely exhausting. And that is why these issues must be addressed early on, systematically, and not just individually. So, for the first recommendation I propose to you today is mentorship and peer support. Young people need community and not only career advice. So, mentorship can go a long way because it provides youth with guidance, the confidence to lead, networking access to reach new heights, emotional support, career navigation pathways forward, identity affirmation. And that peer support, when combined together with mentorship, provides that sense of belonging. It reduces isolation, it provokes that shared learning and that sense of safe conversations and that sense of safe belonging. And when youth can feel genuinely seen and supported, their retention will improve in the workforce, their confidence to lead will increase, their stress would decrease, and that engagement would grow stronger than ever. And sometimes one supportive mentor or one safe community space can completely change a young person's career trajectory. Recommendation number two is trauma informed workforce design. And so, when we talk about trauma informed workforce design, we mean creating systems that recognize many youth may already be carrying emotional burdens before entering workplaces or programs. So, this may include financial trauma, family instability, racism related stress, intergenerational trauma, displacement experiences, and mental health struggles. So, trauma informed spaces must include flexible policies, compassionate leadership, having safe communication, accessibility, mental health accommodations, and non judgmental, youth friendly, safe environments. And psychological safety is a big one, which means young people can speak up, they can learn, they can ask questions openly, and make mistakes without fearing humiliation or punishment in return. And that matters because fear based environments reduce creativity and confidence, participation, and growth. This leads us to our third recommendation of this presentation. Youth belong in decision making spaces. So essentially, young people should not only participate in programs, but they should help design them itself. Youth should be included in policy discussions themselves, hiring processes, program evaluations, workplace redesign, and leadership committees. Why? Because youth bring lived experiences. They are innovative, they have digital understanding, cultural insight into new trends and designs, and community perspectives. So, for example, youth may identify barriers that older leadership teams completely overlook, whether related to technology, accessibility, culture, or mental health in the workforce. Essentially, the real takeaway here is that nothing about youth should be designed without youth at the table. Recommendation number four, feedback systems that actually listen to the youth itself. So many organizations collect feedback, however, youth are rarely seen as meaningful change afterward. So organizations should move forward from creating passive feedback loops to creating more active and integrative feedback loops where they collect anonymous feedback from anonymous channels. They create youth advisory or action councils, youth boards, doing regular mental health check ins, having community listening sessions as well. Feedback is a big one because without feedback itself, action can be damaged before trust even starts to build. So, youth really need to know that their voices matter, their discussions, their concerns are taken seriously, and that systems are willing to evolve. Additional solutions. Additional solutions here include, just one second. See, there we go. Okay, additional solutions here include building healthier workforce systems, which also requires flexible and human-centered policies. Now, some of you here may already be seeing some of these practices implemented in your organizations. Others may be starting to see that journey start ahead. In some cases, organizations may implement these ideas very superficially, meaning they exist more performatively than meaningfully. For example, our workplace may talk about mental health publicly, but still create cultures where employees feel unsafe speaking honestly. So, real change requires intention, it requires accountability and action as well. So, after this presentation, even implementing one meaningful step can begin creating positive change in your own workforce. Now, why this matters globally, this directly ties into SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 11, sustainable communities, and SDG 7, partnerships for the goals. We need policymakers, employers, educators, communities, health professionals, mental health professionals, researchers to work together to create more safe workforce development programs and pathways forward for marginalized youths. Final reflection, we cannot do this work all alone. We need youth to feel safe, to feel respected. Success should not only be measured through employment numbers. A truly successful workforce system must help young people feel respected, build sustainable futures, and youth do not just deserve jobs, but they also deserve workplaces and systems where they can thrive with dignity, balance, and well-being altogether. Here are my references for today's presentation. Thank you so much for to everyone for listening with such compassion, and I truly appreciate your time and openness to thinking more deeply about what youth workforce development should look like moving forward. If you have any questions, thoughts, feel free to connect. Here are my contact details, and thank you for joining in today.